And with that said, I'm going to move on to our local celebrity hacker here, Hank Fordham. And Hank will be happy to share with you folks a little bit about his pedigree and background and why he's important to our customers.
I was going to edit this word celebrity, but I couldn't. So thank you, Brad. Yeah, so I'm lovingly referred to as Hank the Hacker. It's funny for me because it started as an inside joke in my house, but once I got on Dr. Phil for pointing out a security vulnerability with Google, it kind of became a brand. So here I am. I work now full-time with X10 Technologies. I mainly get to focus on our external penetration tests, but in the last year, I found a real niche in the dark web and kind of supporting our cyber threat intelligence services. So yeah, I've been featured on Vice, Washington Post, and plenty of other platforms for my research in cybersecurity. And I'm super excited to be here today, albeit a wee bit nervous because obviously being a hacker from childhood, I'm very good in front of large crowds or any crowd. But it's also my first time ever coming to Manitoba, so it's super excited to be in Winnipeg today. So I just want to start with the dark web and what is it? A lot of people hear these kind of these words being used interchangeably with the dark web and the deep web, but the reality is these are two different things. They're just kind of part of the same pool, if you will. So looking at the iceberg analogy on the right here, you can see kind of like a pixelated Minecraft iceberg maybe, but the top there, the clear web, is what we're used to seeing. That's what we all browse, what we're all connected to right now, and what we're all viewing my presentation through on Teams today. So the clear web makes up 3% of the entire web footprint, if you will. So Facebook, Google, and whatnot are included in that. And underneath that, or underneath the surface, is the deep web. And so this is where medical information is stored, financial data, different private databases. It was invented in the 90s by the US Naval Research Laboratory. It was meant for anonymized and encrypted communication for US spies and military purposes. Unlike the clear web we're used to with .cas, .coms, and whatever else, the dark web operates on, or the deep web rather, operates on a different kind of format of URLs. So they're onion links. They're long strings of letters and numbers, .onion. And because of this, browsing the deep web or actually discovering different services on the deep web is significantly challenging unless you know how to do it. So building on this early research, the developers actually launched the Tor project, or the Tor project was established in 2002, and by 2008, everyone that wanted to access it could use this Tor browser to access the deep web. Because of this, and because of the anonymity and the encryption that the dark web, or the deep web, I should say, allowed, a little shady corner formed, or a little shady corner called the dark web. And this is a portion or a part of the deep web where illicit activities take place. So legal marketplaces, things like safe havens for whistleblowers, think Edward Snowden, who used platforms like Secure Drop on the Tor, the Onion Relay, in order to leak sensitive information anonymously to journalists. And it also provides an environment where cyber criminals thrive. So again, on the dark web, anonymity is paramount, and because of this, it attracts bad actors. So there's lots of things like the hacking services. I'll jump a little bit into malware as a service today, as well as showing a couple of illegal marketplaces for goods and stolen data trade. Next here, Brad mentioned cyber threat intelligence. So I've got a bit of a slide here that explains the usual flow of stolen information once it becomes compromised or exposed through either a third party or, and I hate to use the word virtue, but by virtue of a malware infection. So on the left here, you can see the chart. It starts right here with sensitive information exposed by malware or a third party. This is usually actually, it's always obtained by the bad guy, where he can then leverage it for conducting things like password spraying attacks, credential stuffing, and other targeted attacks against those accounts or services. What we do at X10 Technologies is we collect this same data and we make it actionable, meaning when these dark web scans that Brad mentioned takes about 10 or 15 minutes, and we have a 100% success rate in terms of finding something sensitive, where we can create a report for you, give that over, and you can action that intelligence by making a blacklist or changing any exposed and active passwords. Looking at the top there, monitoring, obviously things like EDR puts you in a significant advantage because it stops this exposure in the first place, and it limits the effectiveness of that credential being abused or exploited by a bad actor, or by me during a pen test. On the right here, we see a wee bit of a chart. So these are some of the different value points that we see coming from this cyber threat intelligence, past just seeing what passwords are out there. We get real-time actionable intelligence for detecting attacks or looking at what might be a compromised machine. We've seen before during these assessments or quick scans where a client had an infected device in their network and they weren't aware until the IT guy's password was included in that report. We track company and employee data exposure. So not just looking at the dark web, but looking at the clear web as well, where we know there's lots of different forums and communities that pride themselves on these kinds of attacks. So we've been able to predict and see attacks, or predict and see things like an imposter account on social media. So if someone is trying to spoof or impersonate an important executive or a very important person within the organization, then we can detect that as well. This one I didn't expect, but it was kind of cool. We've been able to predict phishing attacks. So doing the dark web scan, we look at copycat domains and typo domains. And there's been cases before with cyber threat intelligence where if a hacker is registering typo or copy domains that look like your organization's domain, you can actually see them trying to prepare for an attack, because it takes about a week for them to try and create DMARC records and bypass email spam filtering. So what you'll see is you can sometimes stop these phishing attacks before they even hit the inbox. This one's interesting. We get to see real-time and raw botnet malware logs. Because the way that some of this analysis is carried out with real human and automated agents, if you will, we actually get to see the data in some cases before it makes its way into the dark web. So we can stop damage before someone is even able to purchase it through something like an initial access broker. We monitor 24/7 for exposed sensitive information like credit cards, SIN numbers, API keys, stuff like that, as well as detecting vulnerable infrastructure with passive vulnerability monitoring. So if we've ever heard of Nessus or Shodan, without any kind of active port scanning. We constantly monitor the infrastructure and look for things like version-based vulnerabilities or exploits that can help put you at the advantage. Next here, just to give you a bit of an idea of how much data there is right now. There's 16,000 leaks. I made this photo a week ago, so it usually raises quite significantly. So there's 16,000 leaks right now. These are leaks that are indexed and available for search. Every leak it generally represents one website or a company or organization. But there's also leaks that contain data for multiple organizations or websites. So these are called combo lists. The database right now, or just one of them, is 14.8 terabytes. Again, I think that might be close to double this week, but it grows at a quite significant rate. So the total size of the index database is 14 terabytes. And the concerning thing is that this is all text. There's no images or zip files or anything like that. It just indexes text. Next is there's 100, I think that today this is 171 billion records. These are things like emails, passwords, API keys, you name it. Of that what is now 71 billion, there's 43 billion unique accounts. When we think of the world's population, and especially comparing that to the active users right now in the world's population, this is a pretty significant number. And with that, we have 40 million credit cards. So putting all of these statistics, and especially the 43 billion unique accounts together, there's actually, I can say with confidence, that 71% of this room is on the database. So like I said before, when we do these assessments, we try to provide that actionable intelligence, have you leaving with something to boost your security posture. But we haven't had one yet where we haven't found something. So it's definitely worth booking that dark web scan just to see what there is, if there is. And if there is, what can you do about it? And how can you stop that from being abused? Next, I'm going to go into a little bit just briefly about how hackers are abusing the dark web and our best friend AI. There's a lot of talk right now about large language models, and of course, where that is, the hackers follow. So there's actually a case a couple months ago where Microsoft sued a hacking group who is in a foreign country for exploiting Azure AI for developing or creating harmful content like images or malware. So the hackers were gaining access to different organizations' large language models to use them maliciously, obviously without their knowledge, and potentially also racking up pretty significant charges in the meantime for that AI model. Data collection and analysis. This one, I use AI for this. AI is making it, ignore the point underneath that, but AI is making it a lot easier for hackers, good and bad, to take a bulk amount of data and analyze that, not just for low-hanging fruit, but cherry picking valuable targets and targets that might be easier to hit than other targets. In a pen testing context, this improves our efficiency in making the enumeration phase or the initial discovery phase much quicker, and again, helps us identify low-hanging fruit. API and credential theft. So cyber criminals are using the same tools we do right now for monitoring and dark web scraping in order to collect API and credential theft. So basically stealing API keys to gain access to those different AI platforms or resources, like we spoke about with LLM jacking. Malicious language models. this is not new, but it's something that's starting to proliferate more and more. So hackers or cyber criminals are developing these large language models that are built around offering complex malicious services or purposes like developing malware, more effective phishing campaigns, and also generating harmful content like images or malware and things like that. Going next turn, I'm going to dive into this one again, but I just really quickly want to say or talk about zero trust. And this is what most would consider an incredibly secure approach to improving your cybersecurity posture today. It's something that's been around for quite some time, but in the zero trust model, it's basically never trust and always verify. So no one is automatically trusted. Whether it's a known employee or an external partner, every access request undergoes stringent verification and authentication. So this means that users have to prove their identity and devices have to meet certain security standards in order to complete that authentication or get granted access. So with applying the principle to least privilege access, zero trust restricts users to only what they absolutely need to perform their tasks. So by minimizing this access and minimizing permissions, the model reduces the risk of internal breaches and ensures that sensitive resources are only accessible on a need-to-know basis. Finally, with implementing continuous monitoring, like I said earlier, unlike with traditional methods or models, zero trust doesn't stop at granting access or controlling access. It continuously analyzes user behavior, network traffic, and system vulnerabilities. So the real-time assessment helps detect and mitigate threats as they arrive, providing a proactive defense against cyber attacks. So the approach basically ensures that even if a threat actor breaches the perimeter, they face significant barriers at every level of the system. And it represents not just a security model, zero trust, but a mindset, again, of never trust and always verify. So this aligns more with today's evolving threat landscape, I think. Again, I'm going to go over this slide again shortly here, but I just want to show first kind of the attack flow of what happens when these credentials are gained by an attacker purchasing or using malware on the dark web. So on the left here, we can see what happens without zero trust. Basically, if an attacker is able to steal an employee's credentials, they get access to that full network, the entire network, and every resource that employee or that VPN connection might also have. With zero trust, we segment this and we make it so the ability for the hacker to steal information or pivot and continue that attack is significantly hindered, and their efforts are usually very limited. I'll dive a little bit more into this one, but I'm just going to quickly look at how zero trust can act for you as a shield against the dark web. So looking at the two most important aspects, I think, of implementing that zero trust architecture is a detection and response technology. So if you're using EDR and monitoring, it's important that, and now a lot of the technologies will offer AI-powered monitoring that identifies unusual patterns of credential use, as well as detecting anomalies in user behavior like unusual login attempts, indicative of a compromised credential. Response autonomously acting against the account breaches and disabling the hijacked accounts or affected accounts to force them to log out for a period of time. Just really quick, in one instance mentioned in a blog entry authored by Charlotte Thompson entitled "The Price of Admission: Countering Stolen Credentials," an attacker used leaked credentials, in this case, to compromise an unused service account which allowed them to establish multi-factor authentication and access the customer's VPN. So while this tactic may have allowed the attacker to evade human security teams and traditional security tools, the monitoring technology's AI detected the unusual use of the account, indicating a potential compromise, despite the organization's multi-factor authentication requirements being met. So I think this underscores the importance of adopting an intelligent decision maker that is able to identify and respond to anomalies beyond standard protective measures. I think this also speaks extremely well to how a zero trust approach can significantly hinder an attacker's efforts. And I speak from, from experience. Really quick, Google Cloud's 2024 Threat Horizons report details that initial access seen in about 3% of cloud compromises observed on Google Cloud resulted from leaked credential usage, which sounds like a pretty low percentage until we hear that the 2024 IBM X-Force Threat Intelligence Index reported a 71% year-on-year increase in cyber attacks which utilize stolen or compromised credentials. So this is clearly a developing threat or an evolving problem. Really quick here, this is a little bit of a chart that shows the differences in our cybersecurity services. So starting at the very top there, there's vulnerability assessment. This tends to be usually really cheap or free, depending on what you're using. And it's something that we recommend organizations are doing on their own on kind of a passive or constant basis, just to ensure that you have a vulnerability management program in place and you're doing those assessments on a normal basis. Where I like to come in is the second part here, the penetration tests. We kind of have the middle tier here and the upper tier. So this creates a comprehensive report in comparison to the vulnerability assessment, which usually gives a very large report. And the vulnerability assessment can be full of false positives, lots of junk data, or just different findings that the IT team has to filter through. With that penetration test, all of those findings and everything that's discovered is verified. So the report that you're getting at the end only contains actionable, valuable, and valid information, as well as things like recommendations and mitigations moving forward to make sure that those problems aren't a problem anymore. These also include things like additional testing, like phishing, internal and Wi-Fi networks. And then next is ethical hacking. And I think this is where me and Igor find our niche. Igor does mostly our internal side of things, as well as another team member we've just brought on, Elam. And I get to focus on the external stuff. I like to say mine's harder because I do it from home, but Igor he's a machine. We've got a 100% success rate so far with Igor going in terms of finding some critical misconfigurations, exploits, or vulnerabilities in an organization's network that leads to domain administrator. So it's quite often that we do like our little hacker dance in the chat because Igor got DA, but
Guys, being somewhat conservative about this. We were flying here from Calgary yesterday. Speak up the WestJet Wi-Fi, forming a test, broke into that customer's Wi-Fi, 30,000.
yeah, I had to message Brad because we've done it all now. You do it while you're driving around, and it makes you think, even as a cybersecurity specialist, when you say, okay, we've put a device here. When we do our pen testing, we send an appliance so that we can do the testing remotely. But what a thought that the appliance is sitting there. I'm 30,000 feet up and going to another city, and we were able to compromise the wireless network. It actually kind of Good point. It brings up this. I brought some hacking tools with me today. I wasn't going to mention this one because I didn't get a chance to plug it in. Usually, usually, yeah. Usually we set this up and it offers a free Wi-Fi network. And when you connect to it, it basically opens up a page describing the dangers of connecting to free Wi-Fi and also offers to enter your credit card information. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, it only counts how many people connected. And the startling thing is that every event that I plug this device in at, we get an average of around 100 people connecting.
Get there.
Well, so that's the scary thing is that now there's an open market for tools like these. And an attack that a few years ago might have required a lot more technological know-how or tech savvy to execute. You can now go buy that for about $100 and it enables anyone to carry out this attack. In fact, a lot of the communities that are offering support for these tools or selling the hardware themselves actually pride themselves on offering support to criminals, offering warranty or guarantee packages, ensuring that cyber criminal is successful in using that hardware. So it's kind of freaky because these attacks are becoming a lot easier. And we actually just had a case a couple of months ago, not we, but there was a story on the news where a gentleman, I shouldn't say gentleman, a guy from Australia was boarding airplanes with one of these and basically collecting people's credit cards when they went to sign in or pay for the Wi-Fi. Past that, he was also collecting credentials when they went to browse through that purchased Wi-Fi connection. So it shows how this is starting to become a pretty big problem. And I think that the tools really speak to how a zero trust approach can just nail your security posture and put you in a huge advantage, sometimes in ways we don't fully realize. Last one on the chart here, or I guess just expanding on ethical hacking a wee bit more. We test known and unknown exploits. So we have the human testers that Brad always jokes and he's like, Hank doesn't start working till 8, but I've found a job that I love, so I never work a day in my life. But we do get to test quite thoroughly for new exploits, and we have discovered 0 days as well. And then in this, all findings are verified, and we make further attempts to pivot throughout the network in order to cover as much ground as we can and improve your security posture as much as possible within the scope of that engagement. Next here, I have like a wee screen that shows what hackers are doing. We've all heard of phishing, but it's evolving a little bit. Like we've all heard of the phishing, voice phishing, smishing, SMS phishing. But these things are still relevant, but it's starting to get commoditized as well. So now we have FAS, or I call it FAS. It's phishing as a service. There's a few operators out right now: Raccoon, Meta, Redline. LabHost just got hit by the FBI, so ignore that one. But on the left side here, you can see kind of a flow of what these commoditized services are trying to aim for. And again, they offer support and guarantees to the cyber criminal in selling this service. So they were offering a package for around $250 a month. It targeted over 170 different organizations like financial institutions, so banks, postage services like Canada Post, parking authorities like, in my case, Calgary Parking Authority. And what it did is it enabled an attacker on the first screen on the left there. It enabled an attacker to send out malicious text messages. So sending out a message saying that customs has a cash on delivery for a package, or a package is on hold until you make a payment. Something like that. And then when the unsuspecting victim clicks the link, it opens up one of these pre-made, very well ironed out templates where the victim then enters their information we see in the third slide, ultimately leading again to collecting their credit card and giving it to the attacker. Lab post, actually, I'll talk a little bit about lab post. It was a significant threat in this space, in this phishing as a service space. And it was one of the first kind of names, or I hate to say brand, but one of the first brands offering this commoditized phishing as a service in this landscape. So they were basically offering the cyber criminals easy access to tools and infrastructure like a virtual private server for phishing campaigns. They offered the ready-made templates and automation, enabling even less skilled actors to execute large-scale and sometimes sophisticated attacks. The service and services like it significantly lower the technical barriers to entry for cybercrime. So this contributes to a surge in credential theft and account compromises. Collaborative efforts between law enforcement, actually I think it was 19 law enforcement agencies around the world, and different cybersecurity professionals and organizations successfully took some of these services offline. So using LabHost as an example. But I think more broadly speaking, this case highlights the growing threat of malware as a service or phishing as a service, and it underscores the need for strong defenses like email filtering, employee training, and real-time threat intelligence. So this is a reminder of the impact collective efforts can have in dismantling these ecosystems and how much a zero trust approach can put you ahead. Next here, this is a fun one. So credential stuffing. This has become, I think, especially since 2019, it's become something that every single year it's just getting worse and worse. And we're seeing more and more of it. Where in 2019, it kind of started with, I guess, a younger, more curious demographic using credential stuffing to sell things like Netflix accounts or social media accounts, has now turned into a much more organized criminal activity like trying to do business email compromise or dropping ransomware. So credential stuffing, it's another major cyber threat that leverages these stolen credentials from databases or other breaches. So the attackers use automated tools like Selenium URL, or Sniper was a big one when I went on Dr. Phil, to basically test these stolen username and password pairs across multiple different platforms. So this exploits kind of the common practice of reusing passwords. So if you're using the same password on Amazon, Netflix, and whatever else, and that password gets exposed from insert third party here, then they can actually just automate the process of taking all of those leaked credentials and guessing them against a bunch of different websites. So obviously it leads to unauthorized access, financial losses, identity theft, and even larger scale attacks like ransomware, business email compromise. One of the biggest communities for these types of attacks that you'll see on the screen here was breached forums. This was a major marketplace for buying and selling stolen information like passwords and credit cards, as well as kind of acting like a hub for cyber criminals and cyber professionals to research new attacks and different data breaches. It basically, in its most basic sense, provided cyber criminals with easy access to vast amounts of leaked data, and even fostered, again, a community for trading that sensitive information and hacking tools. So we can see here on the left lower part, there was 11.6 billion unique records available for download. And this was just what was for free on breached forums. So this was just the free stuff, not including the other data breaches or compromises that were being sold on the marketplace. And kind of, I guess, somewhat of a big win for law enforcement and cybersecurity specialists. They dismantled breached forums completely. So you can see on the right side now is what you'll see, or you'll be presented with if you attempt to navigate the breached forums website. So I think this also, well, it disrupted the supply of fresh credential dumps to a cyber criminal market. And it also made it harder for attackers to execute credential stuffing campaigns, removing that support community for these tools. It also sent a strong message to cyber criminals that law enforcement is actively dismantling these underground operations. And again, I think it highlights the importance of other strong defenses like multi-factor authentication, unique passwords, and tools like password managers to mitigate credential stuffing risks, as well as monitoring tools to see when a password is being reused or being abused. Monitoring for breached credentials and staying vigilant, as we all know, is crucial in today's ever-changing threat landscape, and that's why we've partnered with a few different vendors to collect this cyber threat intelligence. And again, we're inviting anyone that's interested for a free 10 or 15-minute dark web scan just to see what kind of cyber threat intelligence you can get. Just quickly, because I didn't touch on it, you can see in the bottom center little chat box. This is from a platform called Telegram, where a lot of us have probably heard it, but cyber criminals like to use it because of the privacy it used to allow. In this case, the FBI took over the whole chat for all the cyber criminals, went in there and announced that this Telegram chat is now under the control of the FBI. So it was a pretty significant moment or takedown for law enforcement. Next here is the dark web marketplace offering malware. So this is malware as a service, or MAS. Malware as a service, or MAS, is basically a subscription model that allows cyber criminals to sell or rent malware. So the model has completely changed the cybercrime landscape by providing easy access to sophisticated tools like ransomware, info stealers, and other malware. It's also enabled the access to tools like this, which, if you'll go see Grace over at the side here, she'd be happy to give you a Faraday pouch. I'll dive a little bit more into this in the next slide, though. And explain what the pouch is. But the service is, like $250 a month. If I go back just one slide or two slides, you can see on the right there, they're pretty entrepreneurial about it too. They've got standard and premium packages. In this case, the standard package was $180. And the premium package was $250. The prices on the services range quite significantly. If we look through this forum post, there's no real prices listed on there, but it's talking about all these different services like bypassing detection tools, bypassing Windows Defender, as well as offering services like keyloggers or email spamming. So the price can vary quite significantly. There's even initial access brokers, like I mentioned earlier, where that price can quite quickly jump up to $12,000 a month. But a cyber criminal that wants access to the SS7 network, which our phones work on, it might be worth $12,000 to him. So one of the most critical components of malware as a service is scripting tools or encryption, which is designed to make malware undetectable to antivirus software and other security defenses. So they achieve this by obfuscating malicious code and ensuring that the malware can bypass detection during delivery. A lot of malware offerings bundle cryptors as a part of the service or sell them as add-ons, enabling attackers to launch stealthy and effective campaigns. The combination of malware as a service and encryption or cryptors is a double-edged threat. It enables scalable, stealthy, and highly effective attacks at targeting businesses, governments, and individuals. So the pairing kind of fuels the rapid evolution of malware, if you will, with attackers constantly updating their tools to stay ahead of security measures. To combat this, I think it's important that organizations need to focus on proactive defenses. So threat intelligence plays a key role in identifying and blocking emerging malware variants or strains, while advanced detection technologies such as behavioral analysis and machine learning can help spot obfuscation techniques used by these scripting tools. On top of this, employee training and strong incident response plans are essential for mitigating risks when an attack does succeed. And the tools represent a growing challenge, but with the right strategy and the right solution providers, we can help you stay one step ahead. Next here, we've got this tool. It's on sale right now. This comes from Bulgaria, probably a few other places too, but this is an example of how the dark web is starting to enable these higher complexity or more sophisticated attacks. So in this case, a relay station attack is where you take a signal emitting device and you relay that signal further than it should be able to go in the most basic sense. So a Wi-Fi expander may also be considered a relay station. What this device does is it's aimed at the theft of cars. So if you leave this one, I'll use this as the car. If you leave this one by the car, outside, maybe it's in the driveway or whatever at night, and the criminal then uses this and walks around the house or the office, trying to irradiate the key fob for that car that has passive keyless entry, which is where you walk up to the car, and as long as your key fob's in your pocket, you pull the handle and it unlocks and opens. So when he can irradiate with the radio frequency, when he can tell the fob, here's the challenge, the car, and tell them, make it think that I'm right next to the car. So relay through this device the signal from the fob, pass the signal to this smaller device, and then tell the car that I'm right next to it.
Does anybody want to see this overlay? Anybody want to volunteer to fill their car up with that hand pack?
It is.
You first, Brad.
It is charged.
Big
so.
drive.
Oh. Let's get an Uber down here.
Yeah.
Let's get an Uber down here. Seriously though, if anybody wants to volunteer their car over lunch.
I actually won't say no.
There we go.
I have a question. Does it copy the transmission?
So that's a good question. In previous relay attacks, we've seen where they copy the code, they replay the code, and then they unlock the card.
Because they need to produce a new key.
Yeah, and so what they did to fight that was introduce rolling codes. If I copy the code and I try and replay it, it's not going to work. But what this does is it completely bypasses that solution, which again speaks on the constant cat and mouse game that we're in. But this just kind of like a walkie-talkie, it listens for the challenge from the car. When the small box gets the challenge from the car's door handle, it says to the big box, here's the challenge I got.
Yeah.
The big box emits the challenge to the car fob saying, can you respond with the answer? And the car fob will go back to the big box, say, here's the answer. The big box tells the small box, and then it relays the signal. It doesn't copy it. But that is another attack that they use. It's just a little older because it's more easier to stop. Sorry, about 200 meters for the range. I guess it depends on obstacles in between the device and the vehicle, or like my thought is if you were in a cafeteria in a mall and the car was in a parking lot, it would still work.
You get cracked on e-bikes at all?
Oh. I'm like, I had to blur out his name. I'm like, I'm worried this guy's gonna reach out and he probably regrets selling one. But yeah, if you go over to the side here, we're giving out, you'll see on the left here, the X10 Technologies Faraday pouch. This is a pouch that blocks signals, effectively stopping this car theft attack. I went on radio 2 years ago when I started my research on this device. And I spoke about it. It aired in Brampton, and the mayor of Brampton bought enough Faraday pouches to hand out to free to every citizen in the city. So it's obviously a problem that's kind of developing and getting worse in some areas. So yeah, get yourself a Faraday pouch. I'm not done yet, but if you want to take a photo of this slide, you can. Feel free to contact us for a free dark web scan. If you trust me, you can scan the QR code. If not, I don't blame you. There's also a Calendly link on the bottom.
Scans are actually typically look at 20 minutes, they run half an hour to an hour. We're there for you. I've done several of these with Hank. I can tell you what happened.
Yeah.
I've been on calls with him, where we strictly go after what I call high volume materials for these holders.
Who's your name?
We source them, we also take a look at that, so having a lot of things like that. You've been 100% successful in finding things. They show up in their text passwords. I've had people say fast, they can take a picture, they send somebody to passwords. Yes. I've had that happen. So take it serious. It's free offer from us. It's an opportunity for us to show you guys what it's something really see what's in their market.
Thank you, Brad. Yeah. I like to say we have 100% success rate in finding something. So we haven't had a maybe like come break that success rate. Be the one where we find nothing. And then I'll brag about it. But next I want to jump into what is zero trust. I know I spoke really briefly about this in a previous slide, but before I end, I just want to jump into zero trust a little bit more. And so this time I'll dive into this slide a bit more in depth, but this slide really demonstrates the key differences between, again, a network without zero trust and one with zero trust. So highlighting the significant advantages of implementing a zero trust approach. So on the left here, without zero trust, when one of these malware as a service, phishing as a service, hacking tools, Wi-Fi phishing, when one of these is used to obtain a credential, we can see the attacker stealing the employee's credential. They get access to everything. So they use the stolen authentication information to access the employee's account. We've also seen before with initial access brokers, which is where they'll get these credential or information, and then they sell the access to a more sophisticated actor. So there's a kind of a market around this initial access. So after that, the attacker can start exfiltrating sensitive information to their server, attempt to move around the network or install malware on other devices. This is usually where ransomware comes in. And then on the right side here with zero trust, even if the attacker steals or purchases the employee's credentials, their access is restricted to only what the compromised account is explicitly allowed to access. So again, with that need to know basis, they only get access to the assets and resources which they're explicitly granted access to. So the stolen credentials can't be used to gain unrestricted access, as zero trust enforces least privilege access and monitors all activity. So if the attacker tries to pivot at this point, they're detected through monitoring and analytics, and the compromised account and its associated resources are promptly disabled or temporarily locked. So this stops any data loss and prevents any further compromise. So basically, zero trust ensures that even if an attacker breaches the first layer of defense or that first layer of security, their ability to cause harm is drastically minimized. So by enforcing least privileges or least privilege access and detecting unusual behavior, zero trust effectively breaks that attack chain. So the comparison highlights the critical importance of adopting zero trust to protect your organization against modern threats and significantly reduce the impact of potential breaches. Because we all know it's not if, it's when. Next here we can, when we look into zero trust and when we're first approaching implementing a zero trust architecture into our organization, there's a lot of complexities, and this slide kind of explores the associated complexities and highlights how it's marketed versus its practical implementation. So comparing low complexity and low value to high complexity and low context, there's a lot of moving parts here. In fact, there's over 3,200 vendors currently. So this is something that we like to help with at X10, is helping you pick the right solution, the one that fits for you, your budget, and your desired outcome. The slide this slide provides an overview of the zero trust landscape today. So showcasing the vast ecosystem of vendors and solutions available, it highlights that complexity and that confusion that can arise from navigating this space. So again, with over 3,200 vendors currently. So visualizing zero trust, this slide, on the left, we have the OSI layer, and on the right, the OT, or IT and OT, sorry, Purdue and OSI. The slide kind of visualizes how zero trust principles can be applied across these two different environments. Using the OSI and Purdue models as reference frameworks, it highlights the layered approach required for comprehensive cybersecurity. The overarching layer at the top ensures alignment with frameworks like NIST and ISO. It provides direction, governance, and budget allocation for implementing zero trust across your IT and OT environments. The visual also demonstrates the importance of applying zero trust principles across all layers of IT and OT, ensuring a comprehensive and secure environment that bridges both domains.
It's worth mentioning that this framework together by Extend, this is all the primary approach. We did not copy or take this knowledge from your. This is based on our expertise and knowledge of more than networking, security, data, applications.
Thank you. Yeah. So in this slide, we highlight X10 Technologies, our extensive experience in zero trust. So we've been championing zero trust since 2013. Just looking quick at how this concept has evolved and how X10 has been at the forefront, starting with the term originally being coined by Forrester. The term zero trust was first introduced by Forrester, and it challenged the traditional castle and moat security models focused on perimeter defenses. With industry adoption, the principles of zero trust gained significant traction following major breaches, such as the ones at Target in 2013, or I'm sure we all remember Equifax in 2017. These incidents underscored the importance of a security model that enforces security at every single layer. X10 created the reference architecture known as the Circle of Trust, which at the time was based on the integration of key players in network security such as Aruba and Palo Alto. This also played a pivotal role in the district-wide deployment for Surrey School Division 36. So on the right, you'll see examples of how X10 has integrated zero trust principles into next generation network access control and architecture. Moving next here, we can see each of these different technology verticals. Fast forwarding to today, these vectors have expanded into several different technologies and solutions. So today's zero trust consists of 6 pillars: network, identity, device, application, data, and cloud. So each of these pillars applies security principles to protect critical areas, whether that be access to data, network access, or cloud control. Brad, if you want to expand a wee bit on this, this is kind of our framework, or kind of how to get started with implementing that framework.
Yeah, we're just kind of wrapping up here, guys. So this is our last slide before lunch. What we really wanted to do is hit home today, guys, the importance of zero trust, the depth of information that's available on the dark web. There's a bit of an underlying tone that I like to kind of bring forward, which is a bit of the light versus dark, blue versus red, however you want to look at it. But the hackers out there are using sophisticated tools like AI. These dark websites, they go on a Reddit site, they can find a link onto a Tor site to find, to buy these services for next to nothing. Script kiddies are doing this, kids in your schools are doing this. They're using toys that they buy on Amazon, which Hank will highlight at Riding the Wave. But there's so many of these things that are available at a low cost that really impact your operations. So putting in a really good framework that protects against the red side by using automated tools that are things like some of the products we use in the EDR, MDR space, the NDR space to check what's happening on the wire. So you're combating AI with AI. You folks don't work 7/24. You heard Hank say 8 o'clock he starts. Those guys, they hop on the wire late at night. That's part of the reason that we're so successful is because nobody's home. So
we go in when you go out.
Yeah, pretty much. So customers often start with us around a few different things. We have a number of assessments and workshops and things. The dark web scan that Hank put up is by far the easiest. Have a look at it. Schedule some time with us. Grace is in the corner. We're going to be around for the next hour, hour and a half, whatever, through lunch. If you guys want to sidebar with us, grab us. We're here for you. So thank you for having us. Have a great lunch, and thank you from X10.
Thank you, guys.
Clearly, I should have given you a warning before I let Hank talk. I forgot that part. He's on our side though, so that's awesome, right? Thank you. It was great. And we're excited actually. They will be back at Riding the Wave. And
cool.
If anyone else
Maybe I should have kept the free Wi-Fi.
No, we still have to do that one. That's great.
I bet regardless we get 100. So
it's not hard to trick someone to connect to free Wi-Fi. That's all I'll say.
Okay, so question.
I just wanted to ask a question. So if you say something about a foreign hacker company, like the macro AI,
Mhm.
that kind of thing, right? So what kind of perspective of this when this kind of like the generating LLM model that being open was like some one of the believe by China it those the general understanding is those LLM developer big companies, they had come from censorship built into them. They make the harmful content promoting generic, right?
Yeah.
But when it's open source and it's got that fact, they can get rid of them and they can create it the way they want, right?
Yeah, so if I'm correct, that your question is around the concern with companies open sourcing their language models and attackers being able to get access to that open source and actually remove some of the censoring
Sorry.
features.
The person online just asked if you could repeat the question.
Oh, yeah, so
They couldn't hear it.
the question was about the concern with companies releasing or open sourcing their large language models and making that source code available to the public. The concern you have, or the point you raise about the ability to remove certain filtering or protection. Oh. The ability, yeah. But the ability to remove certain filtering or safety features that the company's implemented into that code, and that's exactly what's happening. So if we look at some of these large language models that were released with the intention of being used maliciously, so a lot of them are actually based off of open source projects that had the safety features stripped or removed. So that is a significant concern. And I think there is a bit of, maybe there's some ethics behind releasing or open sourcing your large language model. Good question. Any more questions?
There is a product for protecting against large language
Yep.
models in terms of security model. It shims in between the user and point of the database. There are products on the market.
Brent,
Hank, on your travel folder, where do you see the information about that power support all?
Absolutely.
Can you paraphrase?
So he's asking on my swim through the dark web, have I run into any Power School information? And absolutely, yes. Power School is something that
Number one.
you smack me when I'm saying too much, but Power School is something that, because of these dark web scans and the cyber threat intelligence, we've actually been warning clients about for a pretty significant amount of time now.
It is the number one breach that we see because students are reckless.
I knew this day was gonna come.
It was pretty obvious. We don't need predictive analytics to see it. We're seeing it in the scans.
I was screaming it as loud as I could, but no.
It's for good password hygiene. Is it?
Yeah,
Like it's been. It's not a new scenario. It's that we will all at some point, whether
Yep.
privately or professionally, be looking at that.
exactly. Yeah, it's not if, but just when.
So
And
what do you guys think the actual, and I mean actual, blatant hackers, how long they've been in your environment? I know it's published, but how long do you think it actually is?
How long have they been offline?
the average is 3 years.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
published will be, they'll tell you 9 months to 12 months. In Hank's world, they're latent in your environments for up to 3 years. They're moving around when you guys are doing your patch Tuesdays or whatever. They're stealthy in how they move through the environments, and they're often dormant. Just wait for a payload or something to kick it off. That's where the ransomware comes in. This is why you need things like immutable backups, right? So there's lots of strategy around that
Your late time, you're talking about before they act.
before they act, and then they've acted.
Considerably longer.
They could have pulled a
Oh, yeah.
terabyte of data. You would have not had a clue. Yeah. You look at your next month's internet bill and you hit the 80%. You're like, what happened? I can tell you what happened.
To speak on the Power School question as well a little bit more, you know, the exposure of that information is controlled in kind of two different aspects. So when you look at the community support portion of that, which is what we saw on the news, was the power source dashboard being logged into. It's because of credentials that the administrator or the user of that dashboard had exposed. So either they were reusing a password and that third party got hit, or they had malware on their device and they entered password while it was watching. If looking at Power School in particular, so ps.schooldomain.whatever, that is more controlled. The exposure of that is more controlled over parents, guardians that might have access to a Guardian Power School account, or students and teachers that might also have access. So the exposure on that PS or Power School side tends to be bigger because other people are controlling it. And then the Power Source one is the more concerning one, because that's where all the students' tables are.
Good questions, guys. Any more? One more. Another?
Password storage. Where do you store your passwords? What's the best way to store them? In a browser, extension, third-party tool? Is it a good practice to store it anywhere?
We'll paraphrase.
So the question is about storing passwords, where like a password manager, where's best to store them? Can I we
Go for it, Hank.
okay. We use Bitwarden. I highly recommend Bitwarden, but there's a company out of Edmonton called StashPass, and they offer a password manager that's based off of a physical plastic card. So if you lose that physical plastic card, it's the person that finds it doesn't get all your passwords. They need the card and the phone in order to access the password list. So I like their solution because it's a physical password manager, and it's got kind of that MFA or token authentication, if you will, instead of if someone gets access to it, they have all the eggs in one basket. But
Something like a LastPass that's been hacked.
yeah,
Lifetime
Bitwarden
is-
if you're a fan of digital, and StashPass if you want a physical one.
But would you recommend for the average user, like teachers and so on, storing it in the browser?
No,
Not at all.
no. In fact, I'm not going to go back to it, but you saw the slide with like the list of dark web like products and services. Like if you click on those, I was going to put some screens of the ads themselves, but they pride themselves on being able to offer different functionalities like bypass Windows Defender and all this other stuff. But one of the most common upsells, I guess, if you will, with these services is just that, the ability to extract remembered passwords from the browser, extract cryptocurrency wallet information from the browser.
So
So
having Bitwarden integrated as an extension in your browser, is that?
I personally don't. I just go to the master vault and access them from there. I wouldn't let them exit that master vault.
So I just enter them manually?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, that way you're not relying on an extension. I don't want to say.
I mean, that's good answers, so. Any other questions, guys, before we break for lunch? We're happy to answer.
We do have almost 2 hours for lunch. We've made sure to give you some extra time with our vendors. So, yeah, if you have questions or you just want to talk to them.
You want to see
Fine.
Hank's toys? You want us
Yeah.
to hack your car? We're happy to do it.
Yeah, they don't have a car, so they
And we
need to
don't
ride
need to
home.
get back to our hotel. So. I'm sure you can find them.
Okay, so we're gonna take, we're gonna
And-
take a couple hours. We'll be back at 2, Audrey. Oh, she's gone.
Please join our free Wi-Fi.
2?
I should mention to anyone, I should have mentioned this earlier. If you have other colleagues in the office and you think they might want some stuff that's in that bag, just take an extra bag with you. So Wherever you don't see somebody's hands up, you see that.
We have lunch outside in the hall, help yourself, and you're great.
Information.
Thank you.
Wow.
Ollie.
Une page,